Stop. It's a trap. I just wanted to cross the street after a perfect evening with my son. Suddenly, a stranger grabbed my arm. Stop. It's a trap. A huge truck roared past at 150 miles per hour, nearly hitting me. Shocked, I yelled. Who are you? How did you know? He whispered. Don't you recognize me? I looked closer. I recognized him, and my world changed forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. You are being selfish. Dad. The voice of Daniel cut through my quiet evening like a knife through silk. I slowly folded my newspaper, removing my reading glasses with deliberate precision. The crackling fireplace had been my only company moments before, casting warm shadows over the oriental rug, where my son now paced back and forth like a caged animal. Selfish, I rose from my leather armchair to my full height. At 68 years old, I still commanded presence at 6'2". Interesting choice of words. His expensive suit reflected the firelight as he gestured with those manicured hands, a sharp contrast to my work-scarred fingers. Dad, you are 68 years old. It's time to pass things on to the younger generation. Younger? The word tasted bitter. You mean irresponsible? Daniel stopped pacing, his perfectly styled hair catching the gleam of the streetlights visible through our tall windows. I graduated from a prestigious university. I have ideas for modernizing the business. The university, as if that diploma hanging in his apartment meant anything when it came to understanding what I had built. Your degree doesn't teach you what 42 years of 16-hour days taught me. Those days are over. Dad, we need fresh blood. New approaches. He came closer, and I caught the scent of his expensive cologne mixing with the wood smoke from our hearth. You can't hold on to the reins forever. My shoulders straightened, my military bearing from youth resurfacing like a reflex. I can hold them as long as I choose. That's not fair to the company or to me. His voice rose, desperation creeping in where confidence had been moments before. I've been working there for 15 years. Working? I stepped closer, reclaiming my territory. You've been learning. There's a difference. Family photos on the mantel watched our confrontation, the smiling face of Elena among them. Frozen in happier times when our son showed promise instead of arrogance. Daniel's eyes flickered to them and then back to me. I'm not a college intern anymore. I understand the business, the clients, the market trends that you refuse to acknowledge. His voice cracked slightly. With that attitude, you'll never see this company's true potential. Something cold settled in my chest. With that attitude, you will get this company only after my death. A silence stretched between us like an abyss. The ticking of the grandfather clock seemed amplified in the sudden stillness. The will. Daniel's voice dropped almost to a whisper. The will is in my name, right? The question hung in the air like smoke. I studied his face, my son's face, and saw something there that chilled me more than the October night pressing against our windows. Yes, I said finally. But not for long. I pointed toward the front door with the same firm gesture I had used to direct construction crews for decades. Out of my house! Daniel's face went pale. He took one step back, then another. For a moment, he looked like the child who used to bring me coffee on the job sites. Then his expression hardened. "You will regret this decision." "Dad." He strode down the hall, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows, the sound reverberating through the house like a gunshot. I stood still, listening as his luxury car roared to life in the driveway. The engine noise grew louder and then faded as he sped away into the New York City night, leaving only the memory of burning rubber and the sour scent of his anger. The silence felt heavier than Daniel's presence. I remained motionless by the fireplace, shoulders still squared, as the noise of his car engine vanished into the distant rumble of Park Avenue traffic. Slowly, I let my military posture dissipate. My shoulders slumped as I walked toward the wet bar, each step deliberate on the worn oriental rug. An expensive scotch caught the firelight through its amber depths as I poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler. I held the glass but didn't drink. My hands, scarred from decades of construction work, trembled almost imperceptibly. The scotch sat untouched as I set it on the mantelpiece, wiping my palms on my trousers. Elena's wedding photo smiled at me from its silver frame. "He has become everything you warned me about," I whispered to her image. The fire had died down. Shadows stretched across the room. Outside, the autumn sunset settled over the Upper East Side neighborhood, the streetlights creating pools of yellow light on the sidewalk. The methodical ticking of the grandfather clock marked every second of my growing comprehension. Ungrateful. The word hammered in my mind as I began to pace the same path Daniel had worn minutes earlier. After all I had sacrificed, every lost weekend, every dinner that went cold while I worked late to build something worth leaving behind. I stopped at the built-in bookshelves stacked with business awards and industry recognitions. 42 years building Morales Construction from nothing into something substantial. From a 2-man operation renovating old houses in the Lower East Side to a 50-employee company handling multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And my son saw me as an obstacle to be removed. The leather armchair creaked as I sank into it, covering my face with both hands. The smell of old books and furniture polish surrounded me. Familiar sense of the home Elena and I had built together. Before cancer took her. Before Daniel's arrogance poisoned what should have been a legacy of pride. Maybe I was too soft on him, I admitted to the empty room. Elena had warned me about spoiling our only son, about giving him opportunities without demanding he earn them, private schools, the prestigious university tuition, a guaranteed position at the company, all handed over because I wanted him to have everything I had lacked growing up in the working-class neighborhood. The scotch remained untouched on the mantel. I stared at it, recalling Daniel's graduation day, when I felt so proud, so certain my boy would take the company to heights I had never imagined. That pride now felt foolish, naive. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, probably heading toward Mount Sinai Hospital. Life went on while mine felt suspended between disappointment and resolve. The phone rang once from the kitchen and then stopped. Probably one of Daniel's friends, or perhaps work, calling about the Monday projects. Work, the one constant in my life since Elena's death, the thing that gave my days meaning. Morales Construction wasn't just a business. It was proof that a boy from the Lower East Side could build something lasting, something valuable. I rose from the chair with renewed purpose. Tomorrow I would go to the office. I would think clearly without the emotional weight of this house and its memories. The company deserved better than to be handed over to someone who saw it merely as an inheritance instead of an achievement. Carefully damping the fire, I turned off the table lamps one by one. The house plunged into darkness as I climbed the stairs, my shadow preceding me up the worn wooden treads. On the landing, I paused to look back at the living room where my relationship with my son had fundamentally changed. Tomorrow would bring clarity. Tonight I needed rest to process what I had learned about the young man I had raised. The parking lot stretched empty around my pickup truck, a sharp contrast to the usual weekday chaos in the downtown area. I swiped my access card at the entrance to the converted factory building. I heard my footsteps echo on the marble lobby as the elevator carried me to the 12th floor. Morales Construction occupied the entire floor, a modern loft space with views of the harbour that still amazed me after 12 years in this location. I flipped the light switches, watching the fluorescents flicker to life over the reception area where Maria kept fresh flowers and family photos of our 50 employees. Walking through the silent office was like touring a museum of my life's work. The project wall displayed photographs and blueprints of completed buildings, the renovation of the great shopping mall, 3 office complexes in the financial district, dozens of residential projects that had transformed neighborhoods. In the break room, I brewed a latte with the ritual precision of someone who has arrived early for decades. The machine gurgled and hissed, filling the silence with familiar sounds. Outside the windows, the city harbour stretched, grey and choppy, under the overcast October sky. My corner office greeted me with its mahogany desk and leather chair. Both gifts Elena had insisted upon when we moved here from our cramped office in the old neighbourhood. "A successful man needs to look successful," she had said, ignoring my protests about the expense. The newspaper was folded next to my computer, but instead of reading it, I pulled open the bottom desk drawer and found what I was looking for. A small-scale model of our very first house. That old house in the old neighbourhood that had started it all in 1982. I remember standing in that gutted kitchen, plaster dust coating my hair, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Elena had brought me coffee every morning during that brutal first winter. Her faith in my vision was stronger than my own doubt. 1992, I said aloud, turning the model over in my hands. I started by renovating one old house no one else wanted to touch. Memories flowed like the harbour tide. Rejected loan applications. Working weekends. Sleeping in the truck to save money on hotels when projects ran late. Elena bringing lunch to the sites. Pulling splinters from my hands. Believing in something I couldn't yet clearly see. Our first major contract. The renovation of an office building in the financial district. It felt like winning the lottery. 5 years of struggle suddenly validated by a handshake with a satisfied client who recommended us to others. Elena's last words echoed in the silent office. "Don't let anyone belittle what you have built. Arthur, this company is proof that dreams backed by work become legacy." Daniel had never understood that distinction. Dreams without work remained fantasies, while work without vision produced nothing worth inheriting. My son possessed neither the vision to see what the company could become, nor the work ethic to deserve guiding it. Through my window, weekend sailors maneuvered through the harbour in small boats, their white sails catching the morning light. Freedom earned through understanding wind and water, not granted by birthright. The model felt solid in my hands. Wood and glue and careful craftsmanship. just like the real buildings we had constructed. Tangible proof that ideas could become reality through persistence and skill. Morales Construction employed 50 people who depended on careful leadership, not reckless ambition. Clients trusted us because we had earned that trust project by project, taking no shortcuts and making no promises we couldn't keep. That reputation could not be handed over to someone who saw inheritance as an entitlement. My coffee had grown cold while I was lost in memories. I emptied the mug anyway, savouring the bitter grounds as I placed the model house prominently on my desk, where I would see it every day. Standing by the harbour window, I felt the calm that comes from understanding hard truths. The company would survive this family crisis because it was built on something stronger than blood relations. It was built on value created through effort. The phone began to ring at the reception desk. Probably Monday's business starting early. I didn't answer, but the sound reminded me that the business would continue regardless of the family drama. My resolve crystallized like the harbour ice in winter. Complete. Unshakable. Necessary. 3 days had passed since my Saturday morning clarity. Monday's office routine had felt different somehow. Productive, but tinged with melancholy. Now sitting at my kitchen table with a late lunch and quarterly reports spread before me, I found my thoughts drifting back to Daniel's silence. The antique phone in my study began its insistent ringing, slicing through the afternoon quiet like an alarm. I looked up from the financial projections, counting each ring as I debated answering. Most business calls came to my cell phone these days. 4 rings. 5. 6. I pushed away from the table and walked slowly toward the study, my hand hovering over the black receiver. On the 7th ring, I brought it to my ear. "Hello, Dad." "It's me." Daniel's voice had a tone I hadn't heard in years. Uncertain, almost humble. I wanted to apologize for Friday night. Daniel calling me. I straightened in my chair, the late afternoon light streaming through the study windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like my suddenly quickened thoughts. "I thought you wouldn't call me." My voice was more cautious than I intended. "I was wrong to demand things from you." His words came slowly, carefully chosen. "You built that company from nothing. I had no right to act like I deserved it." Family photos on my desk seemed to observe our conversation. Elena's smile. Daniel's graduation picture. Happier times when we understood each other. Something loosened in my chest. A knot I had carried for 3 days. Well, we both said things we didn't mean that night. "Dad, tomorrow the Yankees play our biggest rivals. Their last game of the season." His voice gained energy. Excitement seeping in. "Do you want to go? Like old times? I know how much you love watching them win baseball." When was the last time Daniel had initiated family time? The question took me completely by surprise. Hope surged despite my better judgment. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Meet me at the main entrance tomorrow night around 6:30. I'll get good seats. I'll make it a father-son night like it's supposed to be." I found myself smiling for the first time since Friday. "Of course. I'll come." "That's a wonderful idea." "Son." The last time we had been to the stadium together was in 2019, before the pandemic changed everything. When he still seemed to enjoy my company instead of enduring it. Those games had been our tradition, something Elena encouraged, saying men needed their bonding rituals. Great. I'll text you if anything changes, but plan on 6:30 at the main gate. After hanging up, I stood in the study, my reflection caught in the darkening window glass. Maybe Elena had been right about patience winning him back eventually. Perhaps he just needed time to mature, to understand that family meant more than business succession plans. Baseball memorabilia on my bookshelf seemed to gleam in the fading afternoon light. Signed balls, old programs, a photo of a legendary player I had treasured since childhood. Tomorrow night, Daniel and I would sit together again, cheering on our team like we used to when he was young, and thought I knew everything about the world. I walked toward the bedroom to consider what to wear tomorrow, feeling lighter than I had in months. If this story has touched you, subscribe to the channel and share the video. It really helps me grow and reach more people. The workday had ended 2 hours earlier than usual. I left the office at 4, telling Maria my plans for the evening with Daniel. Her face brightened immediately. Mr. Morales. That's wonderful. You two haven't been to a game together in years. Now climbing the steps to my front door with extra spring in each stride, I felt the anticipation build like pressure in a steam engine. The October evening air carried the crisp promise of fall in the city. Perfect baseball weather. In my bedroom, I opened the closet door and searched through my casual clothes. There, hanging behind the dress shirts, was my faded Yankees jersey from the 90 seconds. The fabric felt soft from decades of washing. Memories woven into every thread. This jersey had witnessed Daniel's first game at age 12. I could still picture him in his little league uniform, eyes wide with wonder as we walked through the tunnel into the cathedral of baseball. He ate 5 hot dogs that day and felt sick during the 7th inning stretch, but refused to leave early. My old baseball cap was on the closet shelf, dusty, but treasured. Elena had bought it for me in 1995, insisting every fan needed the proper cap. The brim was curved exactly the way I liked it, molded by years of shielding my eyes from the stadium lights. The weather forecast on my phone showed clear skies, the temperature dropping to 57 F. Perfect for October baseball. I selected a light jacket, warm enough for the evening air, not too heavy for the stadium seats. The decision came suddenly. I would walk to the stadium. Standing by my bedroom window, I calculated the distance from the Upper East Side to Yankee Stadium Plaza. 20 minutes at most, through neighborhoods I had known since childhood. The evening was too beautiful to waste sitting in traffic, and walking would give me time to savor this unexpected gift of reconciliation. I called Maria at the office to let her know I might be late tomorrow morning, depending on how late the game ran. Enjoy every minute, she said warmly. You deserve this happiness. Deserve. The word resonated as I prepared to leave. Did I deserve Daniel's change of heart? Perhaps patience truly was a virtue. As Elena always said, maybe my son just needed time to recognize what truly mattered in life. At 5:45, I stepped onto the historic sidewalks of the Upper East Side. The gas street lamps came on early, casting warm pools of light over the brick pathways, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Children played in a nearby plaza, while the smells of dinner wafted from house windows. The walk would take me past Central Park, through the bustle of downtown, and then down Grand Concourse to the stadium plaza. Each step brought me closer to what felt like a new beginning with my son. Elena would have smiled to see me in my old Yankees jersey, walking to meet Daniel for a game. "Baseball brings men together," she used to say. Something about sitting side by side, rooting for the same team. At the corner of Madison Avenue, I paused to look at my house one last time before disappearing into the downtown crowds. The house windows glowed golden in the dying light, solid and permanent against the changing sky. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight belonged to fathers, sons, and the greatest game of all. The Great Wall towered over Grand Concourse. As I approached the stadium entrance, crowds of fans poured toward the gates. A sea of red and navy blue mixed with occasional rival jerseys worn by brave souls venturing into enemy territory. I spotted Daniel near the ticket windows, waving enthusiastically. He wore khaki pants and a crisp, ironed Yankees polo shirt. More formal than my antique jersey, but genuine enthusiasm seemed to radiate from his face as he approached with open arms. Our hug felt natural for the first time in years. His embrace lingered for an extra moment, and I caught myself fighting unexpected tears. "Dad, you look great." That old jersey brings back memories. "Your mother bought it for me the year you started Little League." I adjusted the brim of my cap, suddenly self-conscious. Thought it was appropriate for tonight. Daniel pulled expensive tickets from his pocket with pride. Section 18, right behind home plate. Best seats I could find. The price of those tickets must have been considerable. Far more than Daniel usually spent on anything. His generosity surprised and moved me as we passed through security and entered the stadium concourse. "Remember when we used to sit in the bleachers?" I asked, pointing toward the cheaper seats. "Of course, but tonight deserves better than the bleachers. This is special." Our seats exceeded all expectations. A VIP section with cushioned chairs, cup holders, and wind protection. Daniel had clearly spent a significant amount of money to make this evening memorable. The gesture spoke louder than any apology. "Daniel, these seats must have cost a fortune. Worth every dollar to see you smile like that," he replied, signaling a hot dog and beer vendor. As the teams took the field for warm-ups, we settled into a comfortable conversation. Daniel asked about specific players. He recalled statistics I had taught him years ago. He laughed at my observations about the rivals' overrated payroll. "Dad, remember when we came here and I was 12? You explained to me why the stadium was special. The Great Wall, the odd corners of the field. That night you ate 5 hot dogs and got sick. I'm limiting myself to 2 tonight." Daniel laughed, and the sound transported me 26 years back to when he was small enough to hold my hand as we walked these same concourses. The first pitch came at 7, and we stood with 40,000 other people to cheer. The rivals took an early lead, but Daniel didn't seem discouraged. He celebrated every Yankees hit. He analyzed the pitching changes. He bought me another beer during the 3rd inning. By the 5th inning, the Yankees had rallied to take the lead. 7-4, Daniel and I stood together, high-fiving after every hit, our voices hoarse from cheering. For 3 magical hours, we weren't the CEO and the demanding son. We were just father and son sharing temporary peace. During the 7th inning stretch, We sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" with the entire stadium. Daniel's arm over my shoulders as we swayed to the music. In that moment, surrounded by thousands of raised voices in celebration, I felt a complete happiness for the first time since Elena's death. "Thank you for calling yesterday," I told him as the last out was recorded. This was exactly what I needed. Daniel smiled, but something flickered across his face too quickly for me to interpret. "We should head out before the crowd gets too thick," he suggested as fans began to funnel toward the exits. We stayed near our seats, gathering our jackets as the stadium slowly emptied around us. The field lights remained bright. The grounds crew was already preparing for winter storage. "Dad, why don't we leave separately? I parked on the other side of the plaza. You probably want to head straight back to the Upper East Side." The suggestion seemed practical enough. "All right, son. Thanks again for tonight. It meant everything to me." Our final hug lingered as thousands of fans streamed past us toward Grand Concourse. The crowd carried us down Grand Concourse like a river of celebrating fans. Car horns honked victory songs throughout the stadium neighborhood, while vendors shouted the last deals on merchandise and programs. "What a game!" I shouted over the noise. My voice was hoarse from 3 hours of cheering. 7-4 against the rivals. Doesn't get any better than that. Daniel walked beside me, glancing occasionally at his watch. "Dad," I parked in the expensive lot near the corner. "Are you sure you don't want to ride home?" The October night air felt cool and invigorating after the warm atmosphere of the stadium. Stars were visible above the city lights, a rare treat for city dwellers like us. "No, thank you. Son, the weather is perfect for walking, and I want to think about tonight while the feeling lasts." I stretched my arms, feeling more energized than I had in months. Besides, it's only 20 minutes to the Upper East Side. We reached his luxury car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than many people's annual salary. The expensive parking spot near Grand Concourse had likely cost $50, another gesture showing how much this night meant to him. "Be careful on the streets, Dad." Daniel's voice held a touch of concern that I found touching. Traffic can be crazy after big games like this. "Don't worry. I'm not a helpless old man. I've walked these streets for 40 years. I know. Just let your son worry." "Okay." He pulled me into another hug. This one lasted longer than our greeting. I felt his arms tighten around my shoulders almost desperately, as if he was memorizing the moment. "Thank you for taking the first step to fix things between us," I whispered into his ear. "Your mother would be so happy to see us like this." When we separated, Daniel's eyes looked unusually bright under the harsh fluorescent lighting of the parking lot. He fumbled with his car keys for a moment before unlocking the door. "Drive safe," I said as he slid behind the wheel. "Text me when you get home so I know you arrived safely." "I will, Dad. You, too." Straight home. No detours. The engine roared to life with Germanic precision, and I watched his taillights disappear into the torrent of post-game traffic flowing toward downtown. For several moments, I stood in the parking lot, savoring the unexpected magic of the evening. Finally, I started walking toward Grand Concourse, breathing deeply of the autumn air that carried hints of the approaching winter. The familiar route home would take me past the Columbia University campus, through residential neighborhoods I had known since childhood, eventually reaching the gas-lit streets of the Upper East Side. 20 minutes of leisurely walking ahead. Time to process this wonderful turn in my relationship with Daniel. Elena's voice seemed to whisper in the cool breeze. Patience always wins in the end. Arthur. At the corner of Grand Concourse and Sand, Anne's Avenue, I paused to look one last time at the stadium lights. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but tonight belonged to fathers, sons, and second chances. I turned the corner, disappearing from the sight of anyone who might have been watching from the parking area behind me. The walk through the stadium neighborhood had been everything I hoped for. Quiet streets lined with brownstones, the distant sound of celebrating fans gradually fading behind me. Autumn leaves whispering under streetlights that cast everything in warm golden pools. I reached the intersection of Grand Concourse and St. Anne's Avenue, feeling completely at peace with the world. The traffic light glowed red in the crisp October air, and I stopped at the crosswalk like any responsible pedestrian, my mind still replaying moments from tonight's magical reconciliation with Daniel. The signal changed to green. The walking symbol lit up. I stepped forward into the crosswalk, my old Yankees jersey visible under the streetlight, completely unaware that death was hurtling toward that exact spot at 80 miles per hour. A hand gripped my arm with shocking force, yanking me backward just as I had taken my first step into the intersection. Stop. It's a trap. The huge truck roared past exactly where I would have been standing, the noise of its engine deafening, the headlights blinding, the air displacement of its passage strong enough to tug at my jacket like invisible hands. The ground vibrated beneath my feet from the vehicle's weight and speed. I stumbled backward against the stranger who had grabbed me, both of us nearly falling from the force of my sudden retreat. The truck disappeared around the corner with shrieking tires, leaving behind the sour smell of burnt rubber and diesel exhaust. "What the hell?" I gasped, my heart hammering against my ribs as the reality of what had just happened crashed over me like ice water. The man who had saved my life steadied me with both hands. His grip was firm and reassuring. He wore glasses and a dark overcoat, medium height, probably Daniel's age, with an expression of urgent determination mixed with guilt. "Are you hurt?" he asked, studying my face under the streetlight's glare. I'm alive." My voice came out barely as a whisper. "That truck would have killed me if you hadn't grabbed my arm." The intersection fell into an eerie silence after the vehicle's thunderous passage. No other cars approached from any direction, as if the universe had engineered this near-death moment with theatrical precision. "You need to sit down," the stranger said, guiding me toward a bench near the bus stop. "You're in shock." My legs felt unsteady as we walked the few steps to the bench. The familiar weight of my Yankees cap, the jersey Elena had loved, the comfortable shoes I had chosen for tonight's walk. It all felt surreal now. Props in a play where someone had just tried to murder me. "How did you know?" I managed to ask. I sat down heavily on the cold metal bench. "How did you know to be here to grab me at the exact moment?" The stranger sat down beside me, removing his glasses to wipe them with trembling fingers. When he looked at me again, I saw something in his expression that chilled my blood even more than the October night air. "Mr. Morales," he said quietly. "We need to talk." I stared at the man who had just saved my life, my mind working through the shock and confusion. trying to place his familiar face. The streetlight cast harsh shadows across his features, but something in his eyes, the set of his jaw, tugged at my memory. "Don't I recognize you from somewhere?" I asked, my voice still shaky from the near-death experience. "I'm Victor Ramos," he said quietly, replacing his glasses with deliberate precision. "Daniel's friend from law school. We've met a couple of times at company parties." The name clicked immediately. Victor. Yes, of course. The lawyer. "You came to our 4th of July barbecue 3 years ago." My confusion deepened. "But how? Why were you here at this precise moment?" He looked down at his hands, guilt written across his features like a confession. "Daniel told me about his plan. He hired someone to hit you with that truck." The words struck me harder than the vehicle. "That's impossible," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We just made up tonight. We went to the game together. We laughed. That was part of the plan. Mr. Morales." Victor's voice held the weight of terrible knowledge. "He wanted you relaxed and trusting. The baseball game, the reconciliation. It was all calculated to make you an easier target." I felt the world tilt, reality reconfiguring itself into something unrecognizable. The baseball game, the expensive seats, his apology. All fake? I'm afraid so. He owes $50,000 to very dangerous people. The only way he could pay them was... Victor's voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Inheriting my company after my death." The stark statement hung in the night air like a death sentence pronounced in reverse. "But they don't hate you. And do you hate me for causing so much trouble?" "Hate you? Isabel, you are the best thing I have in this world." She smiled. And for the first time in hours, she seemed to relax. "Good night, Grandma." "Good night, my angel." I turned off the light and closed the door halfway. I went downstairs to the living room. My phone was blowing up. 10 missed calls from Ethan. 5 from Lauren. 3 text messages. I read them. "Ethan, Mom. Isabel is gone. Is she with you? Please answer." "Ethan, Mom. I need to know if my daughter is okay. Don't play with this." "Lauren, Martha. Please tell Isabel we love her. That everything is going to be fine. We just want her to come back." I wrote a single message. "Isabel is with me. She's fine. We'll talk tomorrow." Immediately, the phone started ringing. "Ethan." I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the notebook where Robert used to write his reflections. I kept it in the coffee table drawer. I turned the pages until I found one he had written shortly before he died. It said, "Victoria, if you ever feel lost, remember this. The most valuable thing we have is not this house. It's not the money. It's the ability to look at ourselves in the mirror and know that we lived with dignity. Never allow anyone, not even our son, to take that away from you. I love you, Frank." I closed the notebook, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I couldn't sleep that night. I thought of all the women who must have kept silent out of fear. to maintain family peace, to avoid being the problem. As I tell all this, I wonder where you might be listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments. I want to know how many of us have had to choose between family and our own dignity. I woke up early the next morning. Isabel was still asleep. I made coffee. I sat in the garden. The azaleas needed trimming. Yes, but they were still beautiful. At 8:00 the morning, I heard a car pull up in front of the house. Ethan and Lauren had returned from Miami Beach. And everything completely normal, she stated. Don't let them know you're watching. The best evidence comes when they feel safe. That night, I sat in my study with headphones on, watching the day's recordings. Their return from the errand. The conversation in the kitchen as they unpacked groceries. He's too quiet, Elena said, her voice tight with worry. It's suspicious. We need another approach. Julian leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The direct hit didn't work. Time for the indirect hit. I saved the file, dated it, and labeled it Evidence Log Entry 1. The following days allowed me to build my case. February 28th. Julian discussed contingency plans. March 1st. Elena worried that I was acting strangely. March 2nd. They looked up lawyers to challenge my mental competency. March 3rd. Julian's search history showed declarations of parental incapacity. Every conversation was documented, saved, and organized into folders by topic. I watched them conspire against me with the methodical patience of someone building a legal case brick by brick. Veronica sent weekly reports, their social media activity, online purchases, public record searches, the digital trail of people preparing for war. On March 4th, I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. At breakfast, I rubbed my temples. I've been feeling so tired lately. Their heads snapped up like bloodhounds on a scent. That night at dinner, I feigned forgetting where I had left my reading glasses. I've been very forgetful. Elena leaned forward, feigning concern. Maybe you should see a doctor. Dad. It's normal at your age, Julian added casually, but it's definitely worth checking out. I nodded, playing the confused old man. Later, reviewing the recording, I saw them celebrate my confession as if it were a gift. On the night of March 18th, after 3 weeks of evidence, dozens of conversations, and hundreds of hours of recording, I opened my phone and found Harrison Cole's number. Tomorrow, we would build a strategy. It was time to move from documentation to action. The articles appeared on March 5th. I found them scattered on the kitchen counter that morning. Printed pages about cognitive decline, the early symptoms of dementia, and the importance of medical evaluation for seniors. Elena was by the coffee maker watching my reaction. I found this online. I thought it might be helpful to understand what's been happening with you. I picked up the first article and skimmed it with appropriate confusion. I suppose reading wouldn't hurt. Knowledge is power, Julian added from the doorway. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I took the articles to my study, photographed each page, and filed them as evidence. Psychological manipulation documented. They were constructing a narrative. The confused old man who needed intervention, who couldn't be trusted to handle his own affairs. Over the next 3 days, more articles appeared. Residences for people with dementia. The importance of power of attorney. Financial management for those experiencing cognitive difficulties. Each one was carefully placed where I would find it. Each one was photographed and filed. On March 8th, the surveillance cameras caught them in the living room, believing they were alone. "We need an expert opinion," Julian said. "Someone who can evaluate him professionally." "A psychologist?" Elena's voice held equal parts hope and guilt. "I know someone. Dr. Elias Thorne, a clinical psychologist specializing in elderly cognition. We set up a casual lunch. I introduce them. Elias makes observations. Will he do it ethically? Will he be objective? If your father shows symptoms, Elias documents them. If not," Julian shrugged, "then we'll know for sure." I watched this conversation 3 times, taking notes. The tension was escalating. They were seeking external validation for their version of events. On March 10th, I met Julian for lunch at a cafe in Coconut Grove. He had suggested it that morning so we can get to know each other better without the stress of work. And I accepted with appropriate gratitude. Dr. Elias Thorne joined us 15 minutes in. "Hey, this is my friend Elias." I mentioned him. The psychologist. We shook hands. Elias. About 40-something. Professional demeanor. Cautious eyes. "Julian told me about you. Successful sale. Congratulations." We talked for an hour. My performance was impeccable. I occasionally searched for words, asked Elias to repeat questions, and commented on my forgetfulness. I didn't exaggerate, just a hint of confusion. Elias maintained professional distance, but I caught him watching me, evaluating, cataloguing. "It was a pleasure meeting you," Elias said as lunch ended, handing me his card. "If you ever want to discuss professional topics, I'm available." I put the card in my pocket. Evidence, not service. That night, the surveillance cameras recorded Julian calling Elias from the living room. The speakerphone on. "What did you think?" Julian asked impatiently. "He's 63. Some age-appropriate variation in memory isn't unusual." Elias's voice was carefully neutral. "I can't make clinical assessments based on an informal lunch conversation. But if there were genuine concerns, I could evaluate him formally. With his consent. Yes. But Julian, I'm not comfortable being part of this. If you have legitimate concerns about his well-being, there are proper channels." "Sure. I'm just exploring options." After hanging up, Julian's face darkened. "We'll find someone else." I saved that recording with particular satisfaction. Even when they tried to corrupt professionals, ethics intervened. From March 12th to 17th, I continued my performance. Small errors, confusion, repeated questions. On the 15th, at breakfast, I asked Elena about the plans we had discussed the night before, feigning forgetfulness. Her eyes lit up with excitement, barely concealed. The surveillance cameras recorded everything. Their conversations about my decline. Julian researching commitment procedures. Elena worrying that things were moving too slowly. On March 18th, I adjusted my strategy. At dinner, I casually commented that I had been thinking about updating my will. Julian suggested it given the business sale. I want to make sure everything is in order. A dead silence fell. Then Elena, trying to sound nonchalant. That's responsible. Dad. When are you meeting with him? He'll be preparing the documents soon. Making sure you're well taken care of. I left the words hanging in the air. Bait in a trap. After dinner, I retreated to my study. The surveillance cameras recorded them in the kitchen. They spoke in low voices, but the microphone caught everything. He mentioned the will, Elena said, barely containing her hope. That doesn't mean he's changing it in our favor. Julian's voice held a warning. It could be the opposite. But if he really is confused, if we document that he's not competent when making changes, then we challenge them later. Either way, we need more evidence of his decline. Real evidence, not just observations. They talked for 40 minutes, planning how to document my supposed incompetence. Video, everything. Record strange behavior. Build a case for incapacity that would invalidate any legal change against their interests. I watched them celebrate their cleverness, pouring wine and toasting to progress. They thought they were winning. I closed the laptop, opened my phone, and searched for Harrison Cole's number. 3 weeks of recordings, conversations, plans, attempts at manipulation, psychological warfare, all captured with perfect digital clarity. Tomorrow, we would discuss how weeks of evidence could be turned into a legal strategy, how surveillance could be a tool for pressure, how their own words could destroy them. I had documented their plan with the same methodical patience they had used on mine. Only I had done it better. With more detail. With more strategy. It was time to move to the next phase. It was time to show them what happened when they underestimated a man who built an empire from scratch, who understood that true power lay in preparation, documentation, and knowing exactly when to strike. I texted Harrison, I have new compelling evidence. Need an urgent meeting. He responded in minutes. Friday at 10, 0 inches the morning. Bring everything. I hung up the phone. Through the study window, the moonlight painted the lawn silver. In the house around me, they slept soundly, believing they were the architects of my ruin. They had no idea they were building their own. The morning light streamed through the study windows. March 19th at 8, I picked up the phone and dialed Harrison Cole's direct number. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Sterling, your message said you had evidence. Weeks of it. Surveillance recordings. Conversations. Attempts at manipulation. All documented. I need to meet today. This afternoon at 2, bring everything. I spent the morning organizing it. I created a folder on my laptop called Legal Evidence Package. Surveillance files copied, organized by date and severity. Printed transcripts of their most damning conversations. Julian talking about competency challenges. Elena worried about my suspicious silence. both celebrating their supposed progress toward controlling my assets. Veronica's weekly reports went into a manila envelope, underlined and tabbed. I loaded everything onto 2 USB drives, one for Harrison and one backup. At 2, I sat across from Harrison in his conference room, the USB drive and documents between us, like exhibits in a trial. He watched 3 hours of recording, read all the transcripts, and studied Veronica's behavioral analysis. Finally, he leaned back, fingers interlaced. This is extensive. Multiple legal options, restraining orders, civil lawsuit, criminal charges for attempted poisoning. He tapped the trust document I had mentioned. But first, we protect your assets. Irrevocable living trust. How does that work? Assets are transferred to the trust. It becomes an independent legal entity. An independent trustee administers it. You set the conditions for beneficiary access. Once signed, they are untouchable. Not even you can modify them. He pulled out a notepad and began sketching the structure. We'll make it bulletproof. They won't be able to access it through lawsuits, manipulate the administrators, or effectively challenge it. How long would it take? A week. If we act now, you'll transfer the majority of your assets. Keep enough liquidity for personal use. We'll establish strict conditions for Elena's eventual access. What conditions? Harrison smiled. A sharp professional grin. Whatever you want. Age requirements. Financial independence. Absence of pending lawsuits. In short, any measure that ensures she cannot access the money through coercion or fraud. Over the next 5 days, we built an impenetrable fortress around my wealth. March 20th. Trust structure designed. $25 million transferred to the trust. $5 million kept liquid for my use. Elena could access it at age 45, 9 years from now, if she demonstrated 5 years of financial independence and had no civil or criminal cases against her for financial reasons. On March 23rd, a meeting with Florida Fiduciary Services, 2 fiduciary officers, professional and impartial, explained their role. They would follow this document to the letter. No family pressure, no manipulation, no exceptions. March 24th. Final signing. Harrison's conference room again, but this time with a notary and fiduciary officers present. The documents lay across the table like a treaty ending a war. I signed each page, initialed and dated. The notary officially sealed each signature. Your assets are protected, Harrison said as I put the copies in a leather folder. She cannot manipulate, coerce, or sue you for them. The trust is irrevocable. Case closed. I drove home with a feeling I hadn't felt since February. Power, control, security. At home, life continued its strange theatre. They still knew nothing of the trust. The surveillance cameras recorded their casual conversations about the inheritance, their certainty that eventually my money would be theirs. March 28th. Breakfast. Buttered toast. Elena mentioned when we inherit, as if it were inevitable. That night, Julian's laptop search history, how to challenge a will in Florida. I decided to tell them on April 1st. An auspicious date for plans to unravel. On March 31st, I texted both of them. Family meeting tomorrow. 10:00 inches the morning. In the living room. Important. Harrison had advised doing it in public or with witnesses. They could become aggressive. My house, I replied. My rules. The cameras would record everything. April 1st arrived. A clear, bright day. I set up my laptop connected to the television with the surveillance footage ready. At 10, they entered the living room. A palpable, nervous energy in the air. I stood. They sat. The sofa was lower than I was, establishing a hierarchy. I have made decisions about my estate. I filed the trust document. I have created an irrevocable living trust. Their attention sharpened. I explained systematically. $25 million transferred. Independent trustee. Conditions of access. Minimum age 45. Financial independence. No pending lawsuits. I watched their faces register comprehension. What? Elena's voice cracked. Are you cutting me out? I am protecting my assets from manipulation. Julian leaped up from the sofa. All this over the restaurant. A mistake. And you? A mistake. I picked up the remote and hit play. Their voices filled the room. Surveillance footage. Them talking about my competency issues. Planning to document my decline. Celebrating their progress toward the inheritance. You spied on us, Elena cried now. Your own daughter. I protected myself from those who tried to drug me into signing legal documents. We're going to sue. Julian stepped forward, poorly disguising his aggression. We're going to challenge this. You can't. It's irrevocable. It's done. Legally bulletproof. I looked him in the eyes without blinking. Try to challenge it. Don't waste your money on lawyers. We've lived here for 5 years. We have rights. You have no rights to my money. You never did. Julian stormed out. Elena followed, sobbing. I went back to my study, reviewed the camera recording of the confrontation I had just captured, saved it with the date and time, and a label, evidence of reaction. The rage confirmed their guilt. The following week, the house became a battlefield. Doors slamming. Hostile silence. Calls to lawyers were overheard, all saying the same thing. The trust was solid, unshakable. On April 7th, Elena attempted reconciliation. She knocked on my study door, tears welling up. Dad, we can fix this. I'm your daughter. My daughter would never have tried to poison me. It was a mistake. Please leave my study. She left. I sat alone, staring at the wall, knowing what came next. The trust protected my money. Now, I needed to reclaim my house. I opened my notebook and wrote 4 words: get them out of the house. That same night, I called a real estate agent, Linda Moretti, recommended by my banker for her discretion and speed. I want to sell my house. When can we list it? I can see it tomorrow morning. If it's as you describe, we could list it this weekend. April 8th. She arrived with a tape measure and a professional appraisal. I walked through the rooms where my daughter and son-in-law still lived, evaluating the market value of the house they were borrowing. A lovely property. I can list it for $7 million. This market moves fast, but the property must be vacant for showings. It will be. The listing went live on April 10th. First showings scheduled for April 12th. I notified Elena and Julian via text message. Showings Friday. You'll need to be out for 3 hours. You're selling the house? Julian replied by text. Yes. There was no response. They left on Friday morning. And when they returned, they found business cards from potential buyers on the kitchen counter. Their faces registered the comprehension that I was completely dismantling their life. On April 15th, I asked Harrison to draft the eviction notice formal, legal, final, giving them 60 days to vacate. I handed it to them that night as they sat in the living room, their borrowed living room. Julian read it, his face darkening. He tore it in half. You can't evict us. This is our home. Read the notice. Challenge it all you want. No lease. No rent. No tenant rights. 60 days. June 15th. We'll fight this. Try it. They hired a lawyer on April 16th. I listened to their consultation call via surveillance cameras. The lawyer's assessment matched Harrison's. If there's no lease, he has grounds. You live there by permission, which he is now revoking. Harrison filed the eviction lawsuit on April 20th. The court date was set for May 3rd, 3 weeks away. Meanwhile, I rented an apartment downtown. Month-to-month lease. Oceanfront. Quiet. A clean place. No grudges. I moved out on April 28th. The house became hostile territory. I stayed mostly at the apartment, returning only for necessities. On each visit, the surveillance cameras captured their desperation. Elena crying. Julian raging. Both calling lawyers who had no solutions. May 10th arrived. Miami-Dade Courthouse. 3rd floor. Eviction trial. Harrison and I sat at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Elena, Julian, and their lawyer. Young and overmatched. Aware he had no case. Judge Vance took the bench. A man in his 52nd, serious looking, experienced in seeing people try to evade consequences. Their lawyer stood. Your Honor, my clients have lived in this property for 5 years. Under what agreement? Judge Vance interrupted. His family. The plaintiff is Ms. Sterling Fox's father. That is not a lease agreement. Do they pay rent? No. Do they have a written lease? No, Your Honor. Then they are guests without a contract. Mr. Sterling has given appropriate 60-day notice. He looked at Harrison. Yes. Your Honor. Served on April 15th. They have until June 15th to vacate. Judge Vance reviewed the documents. I see no legal impediment to this eviction. The plaintiff is the owner of the property. The defendants have no lease or rental agreement. Notice was proper. He looked at Elena and Julian. You have until June 15th. After that date, law enforcement can intervene. Motion granted. The gavel cracked. Final decision. In the hallway, Julian confronted me, his voice low and menacing. You'll regret this. You're destroying your own family. I am removing those who poisoned me. We'll make you pay. With what money? I walked away, leaving him sputtering in the hallway. The next 5 weeks were a tense standoff. I stayed at the apartment. They remained in the house, packing slowly, desperately searching for rental properties they couldn't afford without my help. The surveillance cameras recorded endless arguments. Elena breaking down. Julian's fury at their complete defeat. On June 14th, I received confirmation. The buyer of the house had completed the inspection and the sale was approved for closing in August. Pending possession handover. June 15th was moving day. I arrived at the house at noon. A large moving truck was in the driveway loading furniture. Elena, eyes red, face haggard, gave instructions to the movers. Julian loaded boxes, his jerky movements reflecting contained fury. They didn't even greet me. I stood on the lawn watching them load their possessions. Everything I had bought for them. Everything they had accumulated during 5 years of living off my generosity. The truck pulled away at 4. They drove off in Julian's car without looking back. I entered the empty house, the echo of footsteps ringing on the hardwood floor. No furniture, no trace of them. No trace of poison in the air. Room by room, I walked through the reclaimed space. Marks on the walls where pictures once hung. Indentations in the carpet where furniture had been. The house felt like an empty shell, contaminated by what had happened inside, but finally blissfully empty. My phone vibrated. Harrison. Eviction completed. Ready to talk civil lawsuit. I stood in the center of the living room. My living room. Looking around at the emptiness. Selling the house would erase their presence completely. But first, one more legal action. One final blow. I texted back. Yes. Let's schedule a meeting for Monday. It's time for this to be definitive. I wrote my reply to Harrison. Yes. Let's schedule the meeting for Monday. It was time for this to be permanently on the record. The empty living room surrounded me. No furniture. Just the hardwood floor and the echo. I sat down, my back against the wall, laptop resting on my knees, and opened the evidence folders one last time. Months of documentation, surveillance recordings ordered by date, hospital medical records, Mateo's statement, Veronica's reports, every conversation, every attempt at manipulation, every proof that what happened to me was not paranoia, but premeditated exploitation. I created a final chronological document, printed everything, and organized it into a tabbed, expanding folder. Each item told part of the story. Taken together, they were undeniable. On Monday morning, June 16th, I met Harrison in his office. He spread the evidence across the conference table as if it were an indictment. Civil lawsuit under Florida Statute 825.103, Harrison said, taking notes. Elder exploitation. financial manipulation, attempted battery by drugging, coercion, aggravated emotional distress, fraud, conspiracy, seeking $500,000 in damages plus costs. "This isn't about money," I said. "I know. It's about public record documenting what they did." He looked up from his notes. "You want consequences?" "Exactly." We filed the complaint on June 17th. Elena and Julian received the court notification in their new apartment, a small two-bedroom unit in a neighborhood far removed from the luxury of Coral Gables. The process server reported they had barely unpacked. Their lawyer contacted Harrison a few days later, his voice tight on the speakerphone. "My clients can't afford this. They're already ruined." "They should have considered that before attempting to drug and defraud their benefactor," Harrison replied coldly. Discovery began. Harrison requested their financial records. Bank statements revealed the truth. No savings. Living paycheck to paycheck on credit cards. Drowning in debt created by their life expectations. On June 28th, the settlement offer arrived. I met Harrison in his office to review it. $50,000 payment plan. Private admission of guilt. No trial. "It's reasonable," Harrison said cautiously. "They clearly can't pay the full judgment, but the settlement would be confidential. No public record." I slid the papers back across his desk. "No. I want this to be public. I want it on the court records forever. Trial is risky. The judge could award less compensation." "I don't care about the money. I care about the record." I looked him in the eyes. "They tried to destroy me. I want official record that they were wrong and I was right." Harrison nodded slowly. "Then we go to trial." July became the month of preparation. Matteo confirmed he would testify. The hospital doctor provided an expert affidavit. Veronica prepared the surveillance evidence for court presentation. I gave a deposition. Hours of questions answered under oath, laying the factual foundation. July 25th. Preliminary hearing. The judge set the trial date for July 28th. That Monday morning dawned clear and hot. I dressed in my best suit and arrived early at the Miami-Dade County Courthouse. Judge Hastings presided. She was in her 50 seconds. Known for her impartiality and strong rulings, Harrison had recommended a bench trial instead of a jury trial. "Judges understand elder law better than average citizens," he explained. Opening statements. Harrison presented the timeline and evidence summary with meticulous precision. Their lawyer, young and out of his depth, argued that a family misunderstanding had been exaggerated. Matteo testified first. He described the restaurant incident with full conviction. "I saw Mrs. So. Sterling Fox pour something from a small vial into Mr. Sterling's wine glass while he was away from the table. Clear. Liquid. Deliberate action." Their lawyer attempted cross-examination. "Could you have been mistaken?" "No. I know what I saw. I couldn't keep quiet." The hospital doctor explained the diazepam analysis results. Dosage. Dangers. Veronica presented the surveillance methodology, chain of custody, and authentication of the recordings. Day 2. July 29th. The surveillance video played on the courtroom screen. Their own voices filled the space, discussing competency issues, planning Elias's consultation, and celebrating their supposed progress toward the inheritance. Julian said, "He's 63, not lucid anymore." Elena's voice said, "We deserve this money." I watched Judge Hastings take notes, her expression serious and focused. Elena testified, crying. She admitted to the restaurant incident, but claimed she only wanted him to listen to her about important papers. Julian testified. Defensive and hostile. He blamed me for overreacting to a family conflict. Then it was my turn. The witness stand felt solemn, formal, everyone watching me. I stated my name, my age, and my relationship to the defendants. I answered Harrison's questions calmly and precisely. Restaurant surveillance, trust creation, eviction. I presented the evidence one by one. Cross-examination became aggressive. "Aren't you being vengeful, Mr. Sterling? I'm seeking accountability. There's a difference." Judge Hastings asked her own question. Why pursue a civil suit after fiduciary protection and eviction? I looked straight at her. Because what they did was wrong. It needs to be on public record for my protection, as a precedent for the truth. July 30th. Closing arguments. Harrison, this is a textbook case of elder exploitation. Attempted battery by drugging. Financial manipulation. Psychological coercion. The evidence is overwhelming. Their lawyer. Family conflict and poor judgment. Yes, but not criminal exploitation. Judge Hastings closed her notebook. I will issue the ruling in writing in 2 weeks. I left the courthouse in the late afternoon heat with the satisfaction of having completed my task. I spoke the truth publicly, presented the evidence. Now justice would decide if the truth mattered. 2 weeks of waiting. 2 weeks wondering if the system would validate what I had suffered or dismiss it as family drama. I returned to my temporary apartment, watched the sunset over Biscayne Bay, and waited for the world to confirm what I already knew, that I had been right to protect myself, to defend myself, to demand justice. August 15th. The dawn light filtered over the ocean outside my balcony. Coffee steamed in my hand. Bitter. Familiar. Comforting. 2 weeks after the trial ended, the phone rang at 9. Mr. Sterling. Harrison. We have the verdict. I sat down. The infinite ocean stretching out before me. The judge ruled in your favor. Total victory. Clear and convincing evidence of elder exploitation. Attempted financial fraud. And intentional infliction of emotional distress was found. Judgment for $350,000 plus court costs. $75,000 in punitive damages. $425,000 total. The number seemed abstract. There's more, Harrison continued. Permanent restraining order. They are prohibited from contacting you directly or indirectly. No calls. No letters. No communications through third parties. Violation results in contempt charges. And the payment? They have nothing. Court-ordered payment plan. Garnishment of future wages until the debt is settled could take years. But the judgment is public record. Searchable permanent documentation of what they attempted. That's what I wanted. Not the money. Documentation. Validation. Public record that I wasn't paranoid or cruel. That I was the victim of an attack. And I had every right to defend myself. Thank you, Harrison, for everything. You did the work. I just legalized it. After hanging up, I sat watching the sunrise. The written opinion arrived by email an hour later. I read every page. Judge Hastings wrote, "The evidence presented demonstrates the premeditated exploitation of an elderly person by those in positions of trust. The incident at the restaurant, the attempt to drug someone to facilitate document signing, constitutes a felony in itself. Subsequent surveillance recordings reveal ongoing manipulation and planning. This court finds the defendant's actions reprehensible and deserving of the maximum civil sanctions." Reprehensible. Maximum penalty. Public document. I printed the opinion and filed it. One more document in a case now closed. On August 16th, I closed on the sale of the Coral Gables house, sold to a young family for $2.75 million. They will never know what happened within those walls. They will fill it with different memories, different lives, different futures. That same day, I bought a downtown apartment, 10th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, ocean views to the horizon. $850,000 cash purchase from the house sale. Modern, impeccable, no history. I moved in on August 18th. Furniture arrived and was simply placed. Nothing excessive. Nothing unnecessary. The space felt like taking a breath after being underwater. August 20th. Last meeting with Veronica in her Pinewood office. The certification still hung on the wall. "Case closed," she said, handing me a USB drive. All the surveillance recordings, reports, and documentation. Go on the record that I thank you for everything. You made it easy. They were predictable. She stood and extended her hand. Take care. Mr. Sterling. We shook hands. The matter concluded. The professional relationship was over. On August 22nd, I sat on my new balcony, phone in hand. I searched for Elena's contact, my finger hovering over the screen. Delete contact. A confirmation box popped up. I pressed yes. Her name vanished. Julian's followed. Both disappeared from my phone, from my life, from my future. The restraining order legally barred them from communication. Even if they wanted to apologize, reconcile, or explain, the law prevented it. 3 years minimum. Enough time for life to move on without them. I felt nothing. Neither satisfaction nor sadness. Just a serene peace. On August 23rd and 24th, I established new routines. Coffee on the balcony in the morning. Walks by the sea in the afternoon. Reading at night with the sound of the ocean drifting through the open windows. I called old friends I had neglected during the chaos. Made lunch plans. Reconnected. And rebuilt my social life outside of surveillance and legal battles. On August 25th, the sunset painted the sky in layers. orange blending into purple, then deep blue. I stood on my balcony, coffee cooling in my hand, watching the day turn into night. 6 months since February. Since that restaurant, since Matteo's warning, the glass switch, and everything that followed, I protected my assets through the trust, evicted them from my house, held them accountable with a civil judgment, and put their exploitation on public record. I won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival, like emerging from dark waters and realizing I was still breathing. My daughter had tried to poison me. That truth weighed on me, unchangeable. But I refused to be a victim. I refused to accept the manipulation. I refused to let trust make me vulnerable to destruction. The ocean stretched infinitely, the horizon line crisp and defined. Somewhere in the city behind me, Elena and Julian lived with the consequences. A court debt that would follow them for years. A public record that affected their job applications and background checks. A restraining order that prevented them from spinning their story or seeking reconciliation on their own terms. I didn't hate them. Hate required energy, attention, emotional dedication, all that I had dedicated to documentation, preparation, and legal battles. Now I only had peace. The sun touched the horizon. The colors deepened, and the city lights began to twinkle behind me. My coffee was cold, but I didn't move to refill it. I simply stood there, watching the cycle of nature continue, oblivious to human drama. I built an empire from nothing, sold it for $30 million, protected $25 million through an unshakable trust, lost a daughter, but saved myself. I found justice in the courts, and peace in separation. Some stories end with family reunions, forgiveness, and healing. This one ended with distance, documentation, and the relief of being safe. The sun disappeared behind the ocean, darkness settling around me. I finished my cold coffee, left the cup on the balcony railing, and watched the stars appear. Tomorrow I would call my former partner about that consulting opportunity. Next week, I would have lunch with friends. Eventually, I would date, travel, and fill my days with something other than litigation. But tonight I simply stood here, free, protected, alone, but not lonely. The ocean whispered against the shore below. The city hummed with its infinite rhythm. Life went on, indifferent to individual struggles, offering new days to those who survived old battles. I had survived, and that was enough. If you liked this story, please hit like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left. Thank you for watching.